Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the SRPC Commission meeting. It's February 24th, 2022. And it's, what time is it? It is 3:53 p.m. We are participating both in person, small numbers here in the conference room, today, Rochester, and also via Zoom. So we have a hybrid meeting, and the in-person communities representative are 4, but with the remote, we have a total of 10, but we do have to suspend the rules because it needs to be X number in person, and we haven't quite reached that, but that's not a problem. We're allowed to do that according to our bylaws. So we do have to take a quick vote just of the 5 people that are here in person to agree to go forward that way. So in favor of suspending the rules to have a hybrid meeting, Katrin?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dave Landry, yes. Okay, takes care of that. So we're going right to introductions. So not being overly repetitive, but Katrin, start us out.
I'm Katrin Casper from Lee. Barbara Holstein, Rochester.
Rick Michaud, Somersworth.
Rochester.
Dave Landry, Dover,
Genesis, SRPC.
and out there, Mike Levinsky. Mike.
Mike Babinski here.
Dawn Jeans,
Here.
Tom Crosby,
Here, Tom Crosby Mabry.
Herb Ureta.
Here, Rollinsford.
Thank you. Mark Richardson,
Here in Somersworth.
Don Hammond,
Here in Rochester.
Charlene Anderson,
Charlene Anderson, Nottingham.
Wes Merritt,
Here, Durham.
Wes Peter Nelson,
Peter Nelson, Newmarket.
Leslie Schwartz,
Present in Durham.
Lizzie Williams,
Present from Dover.
Steve Diamond.
Greetings, this is Steve Diamond. I'm from Barrington.
We have everybody there, and staff, we have Natalie, Blair, Nancy, James, Rachel, Megan, Jackson, and Susie,
And Autumn snuck in too now.
and Autumn. Okay. Quite the crowd. Let's see, staff updates, Jen.
Sure, just a couple things to kind of keep your eye out on, besides those that staff are going to walk through here today during the meeting. One of the items that we're keeping a really close eye on is the EV charging infrastructure funding that's coming forward. We just had a staff meeting internally. Jackson and Susie on screen, if you can wave to everyone. They are going to be compiling information that we have on the priority corridors, those that are EV ready and those that are EV pending, as well as there are a couple tools that kind of help prioritize based on air quality and other variables. So they're going to be reaching out to communities quickly to try and pull together a listing of potential EV sites, or where your communities would like to see EVs stations. And so stay tuned. That is going to be going pretty rapidly, because we want to make sure that the region is prepared and ready when those funds are available. Our scan team is out and about, and they are doing their scanning work in each of the communities. I've already mentioned this, I think, for those of you who were at Friday's policy meeting. The one key lesson learned to pass on to folks in your community is prep is everything. The more prepared your community is for the scan team to arrive, the faster and the more that they can process. So that's just a item to keep in mind. Another item that came out of last week's governor's State of the State address, he announced his INVEST program, which has got millions programmed for housing. In that, there was a proposal to provide 5 million in funding to New Hampshire municipalities for various planning and zoning activities that are not necessarily like changing your zoning code or site plan and subdivision regulations, but include some more innovative things there as well that the community can do to promote its housing policies. So that's something to keep an eye on. That is a lot of money to come to municipalities for planning and somewhat unprecedented in New Hampshire. So a nice, exciting thing for us to keep an eye on that ties into some of our agenda items for this afternoon. And I am happy to say that we have 2 more staff people that have joined us here. Shayna has joined us, which is great because she had a conflict and she is here in time because she's going to do the regional housing needs assessment update that's on the agenda. So I think that's Shayna joined and Stephen joined. Sorry, Stephen.
And Jen, I'm not sure if you mentioned that Lisa Henderson is here as well. I don't think she was mentioned in the roll call.
Yeah. Did I miss the roll?
You're from Newmarket.
That.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, so I'll set staff. Okay.
I'll sit on staff updates. I think
Okay.
I got everything.
Okay, we have one action item here, and that's it was the minutes of December 2nd, 2021. So if I can get a motion to approve the minutes. Okay, Richard, second Joe. Anybody have any changes or concerns or questions about the minutes from December 2nd? I'm gonna need a roll call over here and remote.
Yes, roll call here and remote, but this is our only vote here.
Okay, here we go. Okay, Joe Boudreau. Yes. Katrin Casper.
Yes.
Mr. Nisho.
Yes.
Barb Holstein.
Yes.
Dave Wininger, yes. Mike Babinski.
Yes.
John Jeans.
Yes.
Tom Crosby.
Yes.
Herbie Rita.
Yes.
Mark Richardson.
Yes.
John Hammond.
Yes.
Colleen Anderson.
I'm non-voting member.
Wes Barrett.
Yes.
Peter Nelson.
Yes.
The Henderson.
Yes.
Schwartz. Leslie Schwartz.
Yes.
Lindsay Williams.
Yes.
Diamond.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on to 5, program updates. Shana is here, so Shana, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment kickoff, take over. Appreciate that.
Okay. Can either Megan or Steven hover over the share screen button and allow participants to share screen?
You should be all set, Shayna. Can you give it a try?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to share a brief update about our regional housing needs assessment and our 2022 project and what that entails. So for those not familiar, regional housing needs assessment, or RHNA for our acronym, is a mandated function of regional planning commissions per the RSAs. So it's one of the tasks that we are mandated to do as a regional planning commission. And this allows us to look at housing availability and needs and conditions in our region and get a lot of feedback from the public as to what they need, talking with businesses, with municipalities, lots of different stakeholder groups. We obviously know that housing is a really hot issue, and people have, an innate need for housing. So it's a really important assessment that we're going to be doing. And it is funded this time around through the American Rescue Plan State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund grant. That's a mouthful. We kicked off in September, and we're going to be working on this through December of 2022. It's a little bit unique in how we've, in comparison to how we've done it in the past, because we're partnering with the New Hampshire Office of Development and Planning and the other 8 planning commissions in the state. When we did it previously, our last iteration was in 2015. We did it just as a standalone RPC, but we've found it really helpful to work with all the different planning commissions across the state. We're putting together similar methodologies and outlines for our plans so that we can visualize patterns across the whole state, which will be really important. You don't necessarily live in the region you work. There's lots of different factors. So we're finding that really helpful. We're also able to kind of use everyone's areas of expertise to look at different outreach approaches, different data sources. So it's been really helpful in that regard. Like I said, we've been doing a lot of statewide coordination. There are 9 different subgroups. They cover areas like data, making sure we reach out to, every, unique populations, and that we're equitable in what we're doing. The group I'm on has been looking into outreach and suggesting different approaches to that. So we've been meeting a lot over the last few months. We publicly kicked off the project a couple weeks ago on February 16th. And this was visualized with a press release from the Office of Planning and Development, and individual RPCs were also able to put out their press releases. So ours went out on the 17th. You probably saw that in your inbox, and I'm pushing to get Foster's to publish it. They, like to talk a lot about housing. So we're really hoping that they can help us get the word out, which will lead into some of our outreach initiatives. The first one being our survey, which was also launched on the same day. Each of the regional planning commissions also have a survey. So if you're not located within our region, we encourage you to take the surveys from the other regions. And to assist with that, we created a statewide webpage, which is housed on the New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commission site. And so that shows you what region you are in, because a citizen might not necessarily know what planning region they're in. So there's a map showing that and has a link to all of the different RPCs, their project pages for this project. We also thought branding was important. We wanted it to be recognizable what we're doing. So each planning commission is using this logo here on the right, and it's tweaked to have their respective planning commission name. We also have our specific project page on the SRPC website. Right now it's featured on the homepage, so it's really easy to access if you want to take a look. And internally, we've been meeting weekly to start getting coordinated on our outreach, conceptualizing that, and starting to look at what data we want to include in our report and starting to frame the document itself. How can you help? We would love for you to take our survey. I just sent out a notice today, so a lot of people probably got that in their inbox. We also encourage you to just share it with family and friends. Like I said, it's about housing, so relevant to anyone living in New Hampshire. And we also are asking that you update your respective municipalities just to get word out there about the project. It's in the beginning phases, but we are going to be talking to municipal stakeholders, to businesses, like I mentioned earlier. So just share that we are launching into this project and that we're going to be in communication in the coming months about connecting with each municipality on this. And some next steps. Like I said, we're working on promoting our survey. We are going to be doing outreach to various key stakeholders, some of which include businesses, municipalities, housing developers, contractors, real estate professionals, and property owners, general members of the public, different social service groups. And we have, I think there's probably like 20 different groups we've identified, or even more than that. And we have key strategies to reach each of those groups. So we're going to be using that in our outreach. And just data analysis. And once we get all of this qualitative and quantitative data, we're going to be writing the plan itself. So that is an overview of where we're at, and I think we can do questions related to that before we move on to the next staff presentation.
Start in the room here. Does anybody have, Barb?
Is there going to be anything in, not on the internet as far as a survey for the senior population? Because I went through that before with working on a master plan, and the people said, I can't do your survey. I don't even have a computer. I don't know how to use it, so I can't, I guess what I have to say doesn't matter. And I think, I wanted to know how we were going to address the people that don't have, I can't just hop on a computer and fill in the little surface.
That is a great reminder. We did discuss this in our outreach group about printing surveys and bringing them to senior centers and libraries. We haven't done that yet, but I'm adding that to my to-do list now because it is something we talked about and that we are going to do. So I appreciate the reminder. That's a great point.
Shayna, is the slide deck that you went through going to be, there's a lot of good information on there just to get people who aren't here listening right now to be able to see.
Yeah.
Is that going to go out on the SRP website, or how will that be shared?
Yeah, I can upload that on the website and it'll be linked right on the project page. So I can add that by the end of the week.
I read the press release, Shayna, and that was very well done. I noticed we've talked about this in the past, but the word affordable, it's such a complicated and nuanced word. It involves what people pay for healthcare, what they have to spend for energy of various kinds, what they're paid, how far they have to drive, all sorts of complicated issues. Affordable does not mean cheap. A cardboard box is affordable, but the heating costs are difficult.
Yeah.
So quality and sustainability are the key concepts that I think about. And I also wonder exactly what the mechanism with COVID is for this sudden increase in housing. I guess it's because we're, at least for a while with COVID, needing to do everything in our homes. I guess that's the obvious answer. I'd be curious if other people have other insights on that.
Insight? Does anybody want to respond on some insights to Steve before we?
Mark Richardson and Lindsay Williams both have their hands up.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, thank you. At one of our recent planning board meetings, we had a proposal for a small townhouse development type project. And during the presentation, the developer used low-income housing, moderate income housing, and workforce housing, all to describe what it was that they were going to be constructing there and who would be perhaps the tenants. When I asked him if he could explain what he meant by using those three, he said, well, it depends upon how much it's going to cost us to build it. I guess my frustration is that when developers come into town, they're not familiar with what words to use. And that has an impact on that can have an impact on making a decision on approving a project. So I don't know how we deal with that, but I know that was very frustrating to me.
Good point, Mark. Lindsay, was it Lindsay?
Yeah,
Lindsay?
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo some of what Steve was saying. My comment is not in response to that, but I think that that conversation around just sort of clarity in terminology and all the challenges and sort of what are we headed for, but I think we'll get that feedback. The other, and this is, my comment was actually prompted by Barb's comment. I wonder if, Shayna, if there's any plans in addition to senior centers and libraries if a stack of the surveys could go perhaps to CAP or to some of the folks doing homeless outreach to connect to some of those other audiences that might not, maybe they have internet, but maybe they don't as well, just to get some broad reach.
I had already put that on the list for sure.
Awesome, thanks.
I just mentioned one thing. There's a lot of statistics out there available, and this issue of available housing at almost any price point has been developing as a problem for years. 10 plus, even 20 years if you go back. And so the pandemic certainly may have caused more people to leave more dense areas to less dense areas. But as far as the housing stock goes, it's been a problem quite a long time. And the last serious recession pretty much put the brakes on houses, apartments and stuff being built. That's years ago now. 2007, 8, 9, right through there. So, and I will express my ignorance. I live in Dover, and I've been in Dover for almost 30 years and been on the planning board for many years. I somehow had it in my head at one point anyway, that, you know, there was a lot of stuff being built, even when things started being built, any kind of construction, but housing of any kind. We were getting busier and busier in Dover, and I thought that was something that was being experienced by the whole state, and boy, was I wrong. So it's extremely uneven as to where things are being built and when they're not being built. So every community has to decide what they want to do in their community. But also there needs to be incentives for people that have money and want to build housing at different levels that actually spend their money to do it. And some communities are getting an awful lot of the housing attention, and Dover's one of them. And I'll tell you right now, being on the planning board, there are plenty of people in Dover that would like to have less of that attention. You know, New England is famous for not necessarily sharing amongst communities. You know, you want to get the whole region to use the same ladder truck, you could set off a near riot, you know, talking about stuff like that. But there's a lot of people in Dover right now that really do wish there was one heck of a lot more of the construction going on, moving away from Dover. So part of that's just zoning types of things like that. Part of it is proximity to Boston, Portland, etc. It's a lot of factors involved, but I've been encouraged more recently with some of the other communities that have, are attracting a lot of capital, attracting capital for building and construction that they want to attract. And I'm thinking of like Rochester and Somersworth right off the top of my head. So I want you to know that I'm cheering that. Good. Not that it become unreasonable, but that it's happening, So that was my comment about what's going on. And you can't have very little housing construction of any real kind not happening for 15, 20 years and not have a heck of a lot of catching up to do. Yeah. It's just it's a problem.
Yeah.
Steve.
We'll do, I think we have 2 more comments and then we'll move on to the next staff presenter. So I'll go over to Leslie. I saw her hand first.
Yeah, just very quickly, listening to the comments that have been made, and certainly find all of them very, very helpful and very insightful. And I agree, we talk about affordable housing, we talk about density, we talk about all of these things. I think one thing we really have to consider is, I think what we're looking at more is diversity, diversity of housing, because not just our region, the region encompassing our communities that we're here discussing right now, but the state as a whole is, if I may say so, somewhat rather slouching toward a homogeneity, which an economic homogeneity, which I believe is ultimately counterproductive. And so, so again, I think the issue is diversity, and diversity of housing speaks to diversity of so many things, diversity of trades. And some of you folks have heard me say this, and I don't mean to to keep belaboring the same issue, but I do think it is forefront. We need to maintain heterogeneity. I think ultimately, if we're all going to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And we'll just go back to Steve before we move on.
Thanks. I'd like to think about this for a second as a planning board member about some of the housing that's come before me as a member of the planning board and the concerns that come up. So some might think that Barrington as a small community has capacity to grow, and maybe we do, but there are concerns about traffic, particularly on 9 and 125, which is already sort of at capacity. There are concerns about wetlands, and we don't want to encroach in on those more than we already are. In fact, maybe we should have buffers that are bigger. And a lot of what's come before us is too dense and ends up being low quality human habitat, in my opinion. It doesn't have amenities. It requires people to drive a great distance to work. It doesn't have high quality green space. They're simply leaving buffering, which is not quite the same as a nice place to be.
Thanks, Steve. I guess, are we good to move on then?
Yes, but just before we move on, I just want to acknowledge the staff team that's working on the regional housing needs assessment. And thank Shayna for volunteering to be the point person to present this morning or this afternoon. I don't know what time it is. Shayna and Nancy have been working on the outreach and engagement components of this. Natalie has been one of our lead people coordinating with the other regional planning commissions, and Natalie and Blair will be working on some of the writing of the overall housing needs assessment and pulling all of those pieces together. Rachel has also been a key person working with the state teams, and Rachel is leading the data analysis components of the housing needs assessment, and she's been working with Mark, who is not here this afternoon, as well as Jackson on some of the visualizations that will go with that. So I think I got everyone. It's a big team, but it's a very big project. So for a very short presentation this afternoon.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for everybody that's working on this project. Extremely important. On to 5B. Community Development Block Grant Services.
Blair.
I'm sorry, Blair. Kick that off.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Blair Haney. I'm a regional planner with SRPC. One of the newer people here, so you may not have seen me yet. But I am administering the CDBG program for SRPC. So Jen had asked me to provide a high-level overview of the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG. And then in addition to that, explain SRPC's role, and then also how the program can benefit your community. The CDBG program is a grant program. It's federal, but it's administered through the state level, and the CDFA is the administering body. The program is to benefit low and moderate income residents. Communities identify a project, they apply to CDFA, and then CDFA evaluates the proposals. The CDBG program has essentially 5 program categories. You have housing, public facilities, economic development, transformative and planning. Those grants are usually a little less, about 25,000. And then you have emergency programming. And for example, the COVID dollars, the CARES Act monies, it was put through the emergency program, so like a pandemic. The other programs have a $500,000 maximum project grant award. One thing to note about the CDBG program is that it can be a recipient, which would be a city or town or the county, can contract with a subrecipient, like a nonprofit, to essentially implement the grant. So that's, a very high level overview of the program. And then within that, SRPC's role is essentially twofold. One is as a grant writer, and the other one as a grant administrator, should the community be awarded a grant. This is a service that's no cost to the community. It's baked into the project. And CDFA essentially expects those costs. And in some respects, they encourage the communities to work with us. There really is not any private entity that does the work, or at least anyone remaining. The community can choose whoever it wants, but this is a task role that we provide. CDBG program, because it's federal, is incredibly regulated. Every move requires backup, requires public bidding, public notification. Essentially, these are American tax dollars at work, and the federal government wants to ensure, as best as they possibly can, that all efforts are made to minimize fraud, waste, and abuse. SRPC monitors the flow of funds. We capture the backup documents. We essentially act as a second pair of eyes to the town staff. And for a lot of your communities, smaller, the town staff is already kind of at their limits. And this is a role that we provide to help ensure compliance, which is essentially the name of the game when you're acting as a grant administrator for a federal grant program. Again, these costs are built into the program. We've had a pretty good successful track record of grant writing. We understand what CDFA is looking for. We understand what the national objectives are for the program for CDBG, and we can sort of distill that down to your local level and write a good grant application based on whatever project it is that you choose to do. So what are the benefits of the community? Well, we can leverage funds, essentially. Our success in writing the grants can open doors for additional funds. For example, if you go before town meeting to seek funds for a community project, it really helps to say that you've shaken every tree to get every dollar to bring down the amount of money that you're asking the community for. And it helps a lot if you can show that we've been successful with a grant and brought money back to the community. We can also use those dollars to leverage funds from other grant programs. This is key because a lot of projects, no one program will fund the whole thing. We have to cobble it together. This is where SRPC is really good. We're intimately familiar with your community. When it comes time to write the grant, we know what the priorities areas are, but we also know how to put this in commentary in the application that might be overlooked by someone else. So for example, if you applied for a housing project, we would know that 2 years ago, we helped you develop new zoning for that area where this housing project is going to go. And we can show the CDFA in the grant program, in the grant application, that this is a transformation that has been planned for. This isn't just something that's haphazardly getting put together. Because we have worked with you in different capacities, we are familiar with your community and are able to pull these pieces together to to create a good narrative. A few quick examples of projects that we are working on. In Rochester, we're administering a grant to transform an old senior building into new affordable housing. This particular project is using a subrecipient, which is allowed by CDBG. The community action partner of Stratford County, CAPSIS, is implementing the project. And we're doing administering it, so we're working with all the different entities. And that's one of the projects that we're working on. In Dover, we're administering funds that was done under emergency category. It's a homeless shelter and day area for homeless community members. This is due to COVID. As you recall, this was a big issue. In order to stop the spread, or at least minimize the spread, giving homeless people a place to isolate during that time was incredibly important. Again, this was a subrecipient with CAPSIS. They essentially rented a block of rooms from a local hotel and provided these facilities for the homeless population. And we're administering that grant as well. One that's currently in action is one in Wakefield. We're helping the town pull together funds from various sources, including CDBG, to build a new community center. This project is sort of at the beginning, well, it's a bit at the beginning stages involving us. I know you all have been working on it in Wakefield for a while, but starting to get to that point. This is, again, one of the things that we can do. So I guess in conclusion, as I mentioned, CDBG is a federal program. It's intended to target low and moderate income residents. The program is administered through CDFA and then implemented at the local level, either by the community or through a subrecipient. SRPC's role is to write the grant application and administer the funds on behalf of the community if we're asked to. I wanted to keep it short. It's a big program. There's a lot I could say, but moving forward, for you to think about it and as a way to talk to your community members, if there's an economic development goal for a distressed part of a distressed area of town, that might be a good project. If you wanted to implement something from your master plan, a project that was identified in your master plan, again, that's a great project. So, we're happy to help out where we can. I'm here and Jen's here to answer questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. I have to say that having been on the planning board in Dover in 2 different stints of over 10 years in aggregate, and I think you did an excellent job explaining the CDBG program. It is not an easy thing to do that, and I don't know what your background is exactly, but it's very smooth, and you made it look understandable and easy, and I know it's not. So it's basically the pitch that SRPC is making is that there's an assumption here that if the town doesn't come forward with their own human resource to engage and try and seek CDBG funds or be an administrator, the funds aren't going to flow to that town, right? I mean, that's just the basic truth, I think.
Yeah, it's not our role to tell you what to do. It's to be there to support you when you decide what to do. That being said, if you have questions and you want guidance, we can certainly do that. So yeah, it's walking a fine line. We're not trying to direct it, but we are there to augment your town staff. But yes, someone needs to initiate it. Someone needs to push it forward. In Wakefield, it's a combination of community members, that have, not really any official role, but are just active and maybe on like an ad hoc committee or something like that. Whereas in Rochester and Dover have a little more staff, it's initiated by the staff, and then we serve the roles that we are asked to serve. One thing to remember, Rochester and Dover are considered to be entitlement communities. They have a population that goes above a threshold that allows them to get money directly from CDBG. That doesn't actually flow through CDFA. The state of New Hampshire has 5, and Rochester and Dover are 2 of them. All the communities do have to go through the process that I explained.
No, I'm aware of that, and that is that in and of itself presents communities with challenges. Just people can have all kinds of ideas, but they have to figure out a way to put them in order and be advocates, you know, in the right manner. And I appreciate the time that you put in to explain this to people. So, Steve?
Yes, thanks. So from what I've learned so far, for instance, if I wanted to implement a multi-use path project in Barrington, it sounds like there are 80-20 matching transportation funds maybe. Could this be used in conjunction with that to make the town's cost lower?
No, because you can't match federal with federal.
Yeah, CDBG programs have a 25% match, and you really have to weave that narrative of how it explicitly benefits low and moderate income people. So, you know, Jen's point is from one angle, but I would just sort of, you know, remind people that the goal of this program is really to benefit low and moderate income people. So, for example, the Dover homeless shelter, that's an easy one to demonstrate how. The affordable housing project in Rochester will have income restrictions. So again, easy to demonstrate. When you do stuff that is a little bit more community-wide, you have to really weave that narrative as part of the grant application. So I'm not going to tell you that that is not an eligible project. I'm just going to say you have to be cognizant of that when you go ahead and start preparing your grant application.
Joe?
Yeah, what's the timeline of this? Is this something that lasts for the next 2, 3, 5 years, or what's that?
I believe there's a grant round opening soon, and then it would, the decisions will be made in the summer, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, we're kind of getting up on that deadline for this program year. And then even if they're awarded in July, to be able to get the funding and start actually, you know, cutting checks and using it, that's going to take several more months. You know, there's a bit of a convoluted process in terms of like all the people that have to go sign off, AG's office, you know, a governor and council sign off. So there is some work, and you cannot lift a finger before those the ink is dry on those final contracts, because CDBG will not reimburse if there's any funds expended prior to that. It has to be done under their regulations, you know, their contracting rules. Like when you contract with like someone to build a foundation, you know, that they can't engage, they can't start until you know, there's public bidding, public advertising. Yeah, so all those contracts have to be in place. As again, I can't emphasize enough, it is very, very regulated for a reason, but federal programs typically are like that. They're very regulated.
It is, yes, there are 2 grant rounds every year. The funds have been included in the federal budget for, I would say, decades, and I would assume that they will continue to be as such. You know, but it's kind of one of those tried and true programs that it's usually always there.
I have a couple of different possible things I'd love to talk to somebody about. Who do I reach out to and how do I get started? Right? So it's
Give
a
Blair a holler.
contact. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you want, I could throw my email in the chat. And this way you can grab it. Otherwise, you can find it on the community or the SRPC website.
And our new business cards arrived here at the office today, and Blair got them, so I can grab one from
So
his
if
desk.
you like a paper copy, yes. Shoot, where's my email address?
All set here? Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
So number 6, comprehensive economic development strategy. That's James, Natalie, and Nancy. There's this annual update. Take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. James Burdine. I am a senior regional planner working with our economic development programs. And I'm here today to talk about our annual update for our comprehensive economic development strategy. That's the core plan that we maintain for our economic development functions. So I'm going to give a brief overview of what to expect over the remainder of this fiscal year, and sort of a preview of your role and some of the ways that we are going to be involving the commissioners as we proceed. So the SEDS is updated on a 5-year cycle. In the first year, you do a major overhaul of the goals, the themes, the topics that you discuss in the plan. And then in the subsequent years, you do a much shorter update that is really focused on the latest data and trends. So you're continuing to track things over the life of the plan, updating project information for the priority projects that are included, or addition of any new priority projects that may come to light, and then tracking progress on your implementation plan and the things that you said you were going to do as a result of the SEDS. The role of the commissioners: you act as the Economic Development District Board of Directors. That's EDA's terminology. It's just another hat in the same way as you know, the MPO and the Planning Commission. So you will be the ones to adopt the plan at the end of the process. But then as we get towards a final plan, we're also hoping to use you at a few key points as a sounding board for conditions in your communities, to give us some feedback on policy direction, specifically for the implementation actions that we are setting for SRPC, and also to help us with the flow of information, you know, for example, for project solicitation when we reach out to your communities. The timeline for this year, we're here today in February, sort of kicking off this process in earnest. Over the course of March and the beginning of April, staff is going to be you know, jumpstarting our research, our project solicitation outreach. As I said, we'd like to be copying commissioners on those emails when they go out to communities, so you can be part of that flow of information between your town or city staff and the commission. And then come April, you know, we're hoping to have those projects, whether it's updates to existing things or new projects, compiled into a list, so that we can bring it back to all of you for, you know, comments, discussion, questions. In May, we will be releasing a draft of the SEDS for a 30-day public comment period that's required by EDA prior to adoption. And we are hoping to use the May and June policy committee meetings to cover some of that final discussion of the document, making any changes that you all feel are necessary, and then doing final adoption in June. This is normally something that we do at the annual meeting in June, but we thought this year, sort of as with last year, given potential concerns about not knowing what the COVID situation is going to be like, not knowing if we're going to have to switch to a webinar in lieu of an in-person annual meeting. Our plan right now is for policy committee, and best case scenario, if we can do it at a commission meeting, that might give us an extra week or so on our timeline. Today's objectives, we have 9 SEDS themes, and we'd like to take a few minutes to check in with any of you about sort of what the status is on each of these. So those 9 themes contained in the plan are economic growth, workforce and education, business operations, housing, childcare, age friendliness, mobility and accessibility, community vibrancy, and infrastructure. And I've sort of set them up in groups of 3 so that rather than go through 9 slides and try and talk about them individually, we're going to take these 3 at a time with the ones that are probably closer related to each other, just to make the presentation flow a little bit easier. We also have a few lenses that we talk about in the plan that we try to drive into the discussion of each theme. So equity, environmental justice, and partnership and collaboration are 2 of those. They're not going to get their own sections. Instead, we're trying to keep those in mind as we write each of the other sections. Resiliency is something that we treated the same way in the last plan. This 1-year update, we're going to have a section on resiliency specifically to serve as a final deliverable for our CARES Act funding that we received through EDA. But I would anticipate that in future 1-year updates, resiliency would probably go back to acting a lot more similarly to these other lenses. So as we go through each of these, some of the key questions for you to keep in mind, what we're really looking for is trying to understand what trends we've seen since the last update. So about since May or June of last year. That might be new information because circumstances have changed. That might be new things that we've learned about the pandemic and its impacts over the last year. That might be a continuation of existing trends. And then, are you aware of any projects or case studies or related initiatives that would help us with our research? Whether it's zoning updates going on in your community, prominent infrastructure projects, things like that. We'd love to hear about them so that we can get them integrated into the plan. So we'll start with the first slide, and I think I'm going to hand it over to Natalie for this one to walk us through a discussion of these themes.
Great, thank you so much, James. Good afternoon, everyone. I am just going to present these 3 themes together just because there is so much overlap between them, and then I'll just open it up for you guys to give any input, comments, questions, and all of that. So starting off with economic growth, as it says there, we're looking for a big picture assessment of economic success, including overall employment figures and business growth and expansion. So 2 weeks ago, we opened this conversation up with our advisory committee, the Seacoast Economic Development stakeholders, which you all are probably familiar with. It consists of the economic development directors, chambers of commerce, representatives from educational institutions such as UNH, Great Bay Community College, other partners representing businesses like SBDC, SBA, the BEA, and that was a lot of acronyms, I'm sorry. But things that we heard from them when we brought these same themes to them were a few different things that I just want to run down really quickly, like a short list, just to give you an idea of what we've been hearing from these partners and what we've been seeing for each of these themes in our region. So economic growth, basically what we have heard and seen is that there's been a consistent decrease in unemployment levels in Stratford County. I think December 2021, NHES reported that we were down to 1.9% in Stratford. There's been a decrease in labor force participation that I don't think has recovered, particularly in women with school-age children and people over 65. We did see over this past summer a increase or a return of seasonal workers, those holders of J1 visas that return to the labor force, although that really doesn't impact our region as much as it does others like Rockingham County. We've seen and heard of high consumer confidence as well. I mean, everyone knows about this, but issues with supply chains, trying to keep up with demand. And one of the most notable things I think that we've heard from some of these stakeholders has been the shortage of skilled workforce to keep up with the needs of our businesses. That sort of transitions into the next theme, workforce and education. As you can see there, what we're looking for in this theme is to connect, we want to figure out connecting workers to available jobs and vice versa, providing access to training and education programs that provide relevant skills necessary for employment and entrepreneurship. When we brought this theme up, some of the things that we heard were some of the contributors to the lack of workforce that the region is seeing right now is just a combination of a really healthy business climate in the region, as well as an aging demographic, lack of housing to support workers, and costly childcare. Another thing that we've heard are that higher wages aren't really the only thing that workers are looking for now. So that just means that businesses need to go explore different innovative solutions, such as maybe it's flexible hours, childcare and housing assistance, the ability to work remotely, and other increased benefits that really recognize that work-life balance. Another thing for this theme is the realization, I don't think this is new, but it's really come to light with this workforce shortage that the region is seeing right now, is just that there needs to be a big push to enhance those missing workforce skills and just enhance training to meet the demands of the region and the businesses in the region. One example of this that we've heard of from partners in our region is the Hampton Chamber of Commerce. They are partnering with local high schools in Rockingham County, as well. There's a couple in Stratford County. I think one is in Newmarket and the other one is in Dover. James, correct me if I'm wrong. But what they're doing is partnering with the local high schools, as I said, and just trying to increase training opportunities to get people to fill those jobs where these more skills are needed. We've also heard from partners from UNH and Great Bay Community College that they're doing a lot of efforts to enhance training and apprenticeship programs. And the last thing that I just quickly want to touch upon is business operations. What we're looking at with this one is trends in business decisions that are likely to impact other issues like employee relations or space considerations. Examples include industry clusters, telework, flexible scheduling, and office space demands. I think for this one, in addition to those examples that we have continued to see over this past year, we have also heard from people that there's an increase in the number of businesses that are coming from outside of our region, not necessarily from outside the state, but from around New Hampshire, but also from outside the state, I should say. We've heard from businesses expanding from New York, from Connecticut, and Massachusetts. When we asked them what they heard from the businesses and why they came to relocate to our region, some of the things that they heard about was just being attracted to the Seacoast quality of life, attracted to the educational opportunities that are here, and just the healthy business environment, as I mentioned before, and I guess the relative affordability in comparison to some of these other areas. So that being said, I will just open it up to hear from you guys. And like James said on the previous slide, we're looking to hear what trends you have seen in your community since last year, May, June 2021. And if you're aware of any projects or initiatives that tie into each one or any of these themes.
Pete?
Yeah, thank you. You kept on using this phrase, healthy business climate. And I'm not exactly a business person per se. I work for other people. Yeah. But anyway, to get to my point, as a farming person, it's been frustrating to have fewer places to go to get what I need. And often the places I go, for instance, even during the peak of the pandemic, there wouldn't be anyone wearing masks. And that seemed like an unhealthy business environment to me. And so there's that extra stress of the pandemic. Then you have to drive farther to get places. People are feeling rushed. So even if you call ahead to say, hey, do you have this? They say, yeah. Basically just show up and then we'll tell you we don't have it. I don't know. I think jobs, a lot of people are employed, but jobs are harder because customers are getting angry, and and so the quality of customer service is not always there, and so it's harder and harder to get people to be willing to do those hard jobs. I think that's kind of what I've been seeing personally.
No, that's a great point, actually. And we talk about businesses needing to look at different innovative solutions to attract this workforce. That's definitely one of the things, it's creating better environments for workers, whether that's, just supporting workers. And it's not just about increasing their paychecks. It's about feeling supported. And I think that ties in perfectly to what you just said.
Joe?
So, excuse me. My question is on workforce. Are we tracking at all, not only who's coming into New Hampshire, but who's leaving and why, and what impact that has on the workforce?
I'm sorry, I could not hear your question.
The question is, are we tracking from a workforce point of view, how many people are coming into the state and what their capabilities are, and also how many people are leaving the state and what's the reasons for that?
So that we don't have data on that yet. We're still we're working with the data team to pull that information, but that is something that we are going to be including in the economic growth section of the sets. So stay tuned for that.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm wondering about your office space demands that you have down here, and specifically with regard with flexible scheduling. I mean, since the epidemic, certainly more people are working at home, but businesses are finding that working at home is not decreasing their productivity. And I'm aware of businesses that have completely done away with their large office complex and downsized, allowing their employees to continue working from home, and they don't need that large space. So I wonder if we have a grasp on that and how much empty office space is out there instead of building new, trying to put in people into empty space that exists already. And I'm not sure how we figure that out, but I'm just raising the point.
No, thank you. Actually, we have some qualitative data on that from it's the state level, but there is some information just showing that businesses are so just supporting what you said, basically. A lot of them have switched permanently to remote work, and those office spaces, they have decreased in size, or they're moving to these shared office spaces where they rent out like a space, or they can just send their office workers into there. I'm not sure, I'll have to follow up with the data team to see if there's any quantitative data on that, but we will have some qualitative data that talks about that. I think that we're also going to be reaching out to the Realtors Association to talk to them and see if they have any insight on what the office and leasing space is, what that scenario is looking like.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions up? Don't see any hands. And if there's anybody that has a question that isn't, the photo, the picture isn't on the screen, you just start, yell out, call out, because I wouldn't see you.
Well, sorry, I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna be doing this section too, but I would just jump in and say, is there anything specific to the last slide, to the last 3 themes that you guys have seen change in the last year? Because our big focus is on change right now and trying to understand sort of how trends are going. I think, Mark, your point is very well taken. Does anyone else have anything to say about what's changed in the last year with reference to, well, either the last slide or this slide also?
And if I could just add to that, just as a reminder, the way that we formatted the SEDS last year, I don't know if you all remember, but what we did was have we had like a pre-pandemic section, and then it was for each one of the themes, a pre-pandemic section followed by conditions during COVID and an outlook after COVID. I think like the best way I can put it is that now we are going back and taking a look at this outlook after COVID, even though it's not technically after COVID yet, but we're in that direction. So what has changed since, again, May to today?
Right. So we're really trying to sort of identify the critical salient points that of things that have actually changed, and some of them may not have changed at all. So going into this, housing, childcare, age friendliness, all of these are a little more, well, housing's not, but childcare and age friendliness may be a little bit more squishy points. To be honest with you, like going through this work myself, it's difficult for me to identify a change from last year. Childcare is still expensive and inaffordable and not very, it's hard for people to find. Housing, we all know, is sort of the hot topic in the whole entire region right now. The availability, affordability, type, and quality of housing is a major factor for attracting and retaining a qualified workforce, as Natalie just said. And I think one of the big things that's coming up through this process is sort of like the interaction between all these themes is so important. When I'm looking at the workforce and education section, I'm thinking, all right, well, everybody is looking for workers. Everybody. Like literally you can drive around any town in the region and you see we're hiring signs everywhere. So thinking about that, how are these housing, childcare, and age friendliness themes sort of playing into that? Childcare is definitely an issue. Like I said, affordability and quality and quantity is a significant issue. I think one of the big updates we'll do is talking about how much one would need to make to be able to afford childcare in the Seacoast area. Like as a single mom, as a two-parent family making this, as a single parent making this. We're definitely looking at that because I think it's a big stress on families and communities. And then age friendliness is a bit more squishy, like I said before, which is sort of looking at like how are seniors, how are youth, how are families doing in all of our communities, and how does that all fit into sort of creating a vibrant community and supporting all community members. So I think, like I said, this is the more squishy topic except for housing, but do you guys have thoughts or anything that have changed since last year? This has been a tough one for me, at least. but any thoughts or ideas or things you've seen or initiatives you've seen would be very helpful.
This is Dave. I'm just making an overall kind of comment. Obviously, these things are all related. But my general perception is that it isn't just the lack of housing being built for so long and we're so far behind. It's the decades-long issue with service jobs and how much people get paid. And it's an irony of, I think it's an, I don't know if it's a irony or a paradox, I'm not sure which, but the idea to have the perception of childcare being so expensive, and it is very expensive, and yet the people that have to be there for your child to be cared for are not being paid anywhere near the kind of money they would need to live anywhere near most of the jobs are. So that's not a new subject, but it's one of the many subjects that have been really aggravated with the pandemic. But I want to say, and this is just my own view, but I wouldn't want to blame too many things on the pandemic. That at some point this will pass, and some other thing is going to cause issues, and that'll pass. But the ongoing problem, having moved to very much a service economy, and so many of those services that people are demanding, and not only demanding them, they're demanding them to be quality. Certainly when it comes to their children, they're even more demanding. But you can't just say, I'm not going to that restaurant anymore because I don't like how long it took me to get my meal. You can't. You can do that when it comes to restaurants, but it's not as easy to do that kind of thing with childcare. There's not a great childcare facility every other block, So
I mean, we are definitely focusing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut over anybody. We're definitely focusing on that, Dave, in our update. I think we're looking at childcare wages and how that impacts how the industry can actually go. So I totally appreciate your point.
Katrina?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I think one of the biggest changes, and I apologize for doing is mental health. Excuse me. And I think when it comes to childcare and age friendliness, and also your workforce, how much people can do when they're dealing with depression, when they're dealing with issues, and that is pandemic related, and that is struggle related. You really decrease everyone's ability, and childcare also with pandemic, you're paying for something that you can't even use because they're constantly not even there. So I think it's very complicated, but I do think we have to look at mental health, because going forward, as you go through trauma, it's the post-traumatic stress that really will start to wear on us and will be affecting all these different areas. And also, as a person who's looking for mental health services, there is nobody available. Like, to find mental health for your child, for your family, you cannot get care. So huge crisis like ahead.
Thank you, Katrina. Joe?
Yeah, I think one of it's right on what you said, Dave, around the pandemic. I think one of the things that's changed in the last year is the fact that the pandemic has put a spotlight on all of these areas. And it's starting to show up some of the discrepancies or lack of facilities or whatever the scenario is. I think that's a major change in the last year. So childcare, all of a sudden, the spotlight is on it more than it's ever been. the same with housing, the same with work. So I think we need to highlight that in this report that says things are changing, and it's a result of the pandemic, and it's not because people are sick. It's because we all of a sudden started to look at things in a little bit more detail.
Right.
Lindsay?
Thanks.
This
I
is
just
Lisa.
wanted to, sorry.
I'm sorry, Lindsay, do you want to, go ahead, jump in.
Sure. I just wanted to underscore a couple things that were said. I'm sort of digesting this. I think I have a lot of thoughts as I digest it as well. But I think what really stood out for me, and I couldn't hear who in the room was speaking about mental health, but I think the interlink between the mental health aspects and all of these other pieces, whether it's stress about childcare, whether sort of all the different aspects, the instability of housing contributing to mental health, which then has an impact on the economic, sort of what's going on in our region. And so I think sort of drawing out the role, and it has ties to workforce, because folks that are working in the mental health services are also burnout. So like, so it's this like perpetual loop that I think is going to hit us in the coming years if we're not prepared for it. And it ties to workforce development and education and all of these other pieces. And I think for me, what I was reflecting on is the link there to age friendliness as well. If we're looking at an aging population and concerns about whether or not there's appropriate support structures for the younger generation to grow up here and stay and want to continue here as well, is that we need to be thinking about the mental health impacts on younger populations as well, and sort of using that as perhaps as a thread to connect across. So that was just what popped to mind during this discussion.
Okay, Lisa?
Hi. So I have some thoughts about the age-friendly aspect and changes that have happened, and they are directly tied to workforce, but it comes around to decreased access to care for older adults. So I would say, and I work in this field, that the trend has accelerated in terms of open positions in long-term care communities, and as a result, some providers have actually kind of shuttered beds, because it's not that they don't see demand, it's that they don't have the workforce to support new residents if they were to take them on. So when you have infrastructure that is being underutilized like that, that is directly related to the availability of workforce, then you have people potentially in unsafe conditions in their home who need an option to transition to supportive care. Likewise, for individuals living in community who might need just some more basic home supports to continue to reside in their own home, the workforce shortage, again, unstaffed home care hours that folks might be eligible for, but the workers just aren't there, leaves people again isolated and at greater risk of a health incident. So that has definitely been an increasing trend over the last year, but as others have said, this trend was heading in a negative direction for some time in this field in general due to workforce constraints and rightful pushback around wages and things that are systemic issues that are going to have to be addressed. But I wanted to note that acceleration.
Thank you. Anybody else here?
We still have a couple of hands raised. I don't know, James is urging us to move on. We are getting close to time, right?
Yeah, I think if we could hit Steve and Mark, who have their hands up for this one, and then we can move to the last slide, if that's okay.
Hi, James, thank you. All right, Steve.
Thank you. I'll try to make it quick. On a few occasions, the Barrington Planning Board has wrestled with questions around home occupations, business within one's home. And I would love to see, I don't have all the answers about this, certainly, but a continuing more nuanced approach to how we deal with business activity in people's homes. There's got to be ways of making that not harmful and yet more extensive. And my vision, which I have no idea how to implement, on how to be more age-friendly and provide better childcare, is to somehow bring elders into the childcare world for teaching and mentoring. It seems like too much we're warehousing these people as opposed to finding meaningful ways to help them be a part of their community.
Mark?
Yeah, I between the last slide and this one and the references to workforce and attracting businesses, I'm sitting here and thinking about our vocational schools that we have here in the local area, and also the community college system in Great Bay, as well as the university certainly. But I think we have, better than average educational opportunities, particularly in the trades. And I honestly don't know, and I probably should, being on the school board, I don't know how many businesses reach out to our vocational centers for the young people coming out of those schools for educational training in the trades. I know my granddaughter is in the CNA program. Every college that she applied to got back to her and said, yes, you're in, just send us the money. And let's talk about it. There was no discussion about it. The healthcare industry certainly needs people, and they're grabbing these kids out of the CNA program as quickly as they can to get them more education. But the trades, recently we had a plumbing issue, and it was a considerable amount of time that we had to wait to get a plumber over to the house, and all those things. I mean, I just don't know how many of the local businesses who need people can find one of the trade schools that have a program that meets their needs and work out and work something out with getting the kids into those businesses.
Mark? Okay, James?
Hey, yeah, and just to hit really quickly, Mark, that's a great point, and something that we've also heard from our partners at Great Bay and at UNH is that students are dealing with all of the same problems that employees are dealing with. And so they have seen some declines in enrollment because students have had mental health issues to deal with, or because they had enough going on, they needed to choose between taking a semester off and working. So, the students are people too, I guess, and that just compounds some of these issues. So our final slide includes the themes mobility and accessibility, community vibrancy, and infrastructure. There is some overlap with these and a lot of the work we do on the transportation side. So to the extent that we're dealing with transportation issues here in the SEDS, we're either trying to do them as a quick hit and a reference over to the MTP rather than duplicating that discussion, or sort of focusing on, for mobility and accessibility, that user experience of being in or getting around our communities as it ties to vibrancy. So, for things like that, that might be looking a little bit more at, walking, cycling, transit. For example, we're seeing indications that traffic on transit hasn't fully recovered to where we had been in 2019. So that means that people are choosing to get around in a slightly different way, or I guess are just getting around less. Spoken as somebody who is still working almost entirely from home. community vibrancy. Our goal here is not to define vibrant for our communities. We understand that we are a region in which we have a wide variety of interpretations of what it means to be a vibrant community. But there are, a myriad choices and options throughout our region as well, whether it's, walkable 15-minute downtown community, whether it's natural resources, tourism attractors, or some combination of all of the above. And then infrastructure is just thinking about the physical improvements, the stuff in the ground, your broadband, water, sewer, utilities that support all of these other related functions. For that, there have been, as we've discussed numerous times over the last year, all kinds of new funding opportunities opening up. But then we're also anticipating with some of those funding opportunities that they are being in some ways absorbed by also rising costs of labor and construction. Projects are costing more, or being used to fill deferred maintenance or backlogs of projects that need to be funded. So we're running a little low on time, but I think I could take maybe 2 or 3 quick suggestions.
Got Dawn.
Yeah, the community vibrancy hits home here in Lee because as a Conservation Commission member, the use of our trails on town-owned lands has been exponential in the past year or two. So major change, and major usage, wearing down footbridges needed, more maps, more explaining. So, and then the accessibility of them too. We've tried a little bit with maybe AARP funding to help with some accessibility on trails, but the competition's quite huge. So definitely could use more assistance with getting funding for what we are seeing as an obvious impact. It's not even if you build it, they will come. They're out there, and we need to keep up with the demand that we're seeing so that it doesn't degrade the resource.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, John. Anybody else have anything to offer on this one? I guess we're set, James.
Awesome, thanks so much. So that really wraps up everything that we had for you today. If you had additional thoughts that you weren't able to get into the conversation, or think of something over the next few days, our email addresses are here, or send it through other staff, and we'd love to see any other thoughts you have.
Thank you. Okay, great job, everybody. Very interesting. A lot of work went into it, and obviously there's a lot more work ahead. So on to Commissioner Roundtable. I know we only have a couple minutes. There's been some kind of commissioner updates on different things going on in their communities. It just kind of flowed from some of the conversations we've had. But if there's anybody here in the room first that has anything you want to mention about their community, the value to us? No? All set? Anybody remotely have anything they want to share with respect to their communities or otherwise? Steve, Steve, okay, I see you.
Yes, what was I going to say? I'm sorry. I'm losing track. Sorry, get back to me. Give me a moment.
Okay. Lindsay?
Yes, it just occurred to me that others might be interested. So Dover, last night at our city council meeting, we had a process, I think I mentioned in a previous meeting, that we had a committee studying stormwater and flood resilience funding options for our community. And so they had issued their report to us a couple of weeks back. And last night, the council voted to move forward with developing a stormwater utility to try to address funding needs into the future. And I just mentioned it that if folks are interested, I can share more in a future meeting. Obviously, this is going to develop over the course of the next sort of year and a half, but thought other communities might be interested as well.
Thanks, Lindsay. Don, did you have your hand up, Don? Hammond? No? Okay. Anybody else out there? Steve.
Yes, now I remember what it was. Sorry about that. So in today's packet, there was, I think this has come up in previous meetings too. I'm just reading a quote here. 8-hour ozone national ambient air quality standard is revoked for transportation conformity purposes in the Boston, Manchester, Portsmouth area. So who makes that decision, and what would the dollar and cents consequence be if we acknowledged the nonconformity of ozone in those areas?
Those are very great questions, Steve, and I'm gonna put myself out there to attempt and say I don't know the answer. So that's a good policy meeting question that would definitely go to Colin. So the ozone standards, those are all EPA set, and then I think DES works in concert with the Department of Transportation to do the evaluation and monitoring and determine which community or which regions are in compliance and not with ozone standards. But beyond that, I would have to follow up and get you more details to answer your questions.
Anybody else? Like we're good. I'm missing your hand, yell out. Move on to citizens forum. I don't think we have anybody that we don't have here. Okay. And if I can get a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Steve, can I get a second? Joe, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone. Thank you.